All right. Welcome everybody to the last workshop of Arlington County Home Show and Expo 2001 virtual event. Uh, how can we finish the best finish here with Mr. Dave Daly today?
And the
He's
cleanup hitter.
he's going to be talking about easy home plumbing repairs. And to tell you the truth, his class has been so wonderful. And you're going to be able to probably, when you look at this recording, it's going to be here for 6 months. But he is always available. If you're going to call him, he's have a landing page here in the Home Expo. We're going to keep it there for 6 months. And then we'll see. Maybe next year we'll come back uh, live, and then we do it the way we used to do it. But now, please, David, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jorge. Yeah, how we doing? So we got a few people here. We're going to look at your house as a system and the plumbing system, how it operates in your house. And we're going to look at some of the things you can do and maybe some of the things that you can't do, but you know what needs to be done. And so if you hire somebody to do them, you know they're doing it right. Sometimes that's more valuable than having to fly blind and trust somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, but they talk a good game so they can get paid. Okay, so we're going to look at easy home plumbing repair. And I'm Dave Daly, and I'm the training director for an outfit called ASTRACOR, Spanish language acronym for Asociación de Trabajadores de Construcción Residencial. And there's our website. We are an adult education provider. We do certification training for the Building Performance Institute. We also train contractors. We train energy auditors for DOE, Department of Energy, and we do Virginia trade licensed energy auditors for the Board of Contractors. Okay, so the topics we're going to look at today, we're going to look at valve and pipe repair, and then we're going to look at some fixtures. We're going to look at toilets, faucets, water heaters. And so we're going to also, by osmosis, we're going to try to demonstrate some of the tools you should have. And then we'll go over some basic repair techniques. Now, when I'm in a live show, obviously we can do like a petting zoo. We can pass stuff around. We can actually have people come up and touch tools and what have you. But this would not have been practical last year or this year because we'd have to maintain a 6-foot distance and we'd have to wipe down all the tools with disinfectant in between. So logistically it becomes impossible. So we're going to try to do it virtually this time around. Okay, so we're going to start off by reviewing how your plumbing system works. And hopefully, I did not realize this sidebar would be on here. Is there any way for people to, possibly there's a way they can adjust their sidebar and see different parts of the presentation. But essentially, we're looking at your parts of your plumbing system. We have supply lines, which are hot and cold lines to your fixtures. We have drain lines, which take what they call gray water. Gray water is stuff that would, like, say, come off of a washing machine, or come out of a bathroom sink, come out of a bathtub or whatever. And that, as opposed to black water, which is picked up by waste lines. And that is solid material that comes along with the wastewater. So we don't want to get too graphic to discuss what's in the wastewater, although it's not just toilets, it is also solids from a kitchen garbage disposer. So this is black water, and the black water needs to go to a different place. State of California now is basically putting black water in right to the sanitation plant, and the gray water to a holding tank. So when they build new houses, you reuse the gray water. Vent lines are there to admit air. So in other words, if you didn't let air in through a plumbing vent, your stuff wouldn't drain. For example, if you just take a soda straw and put it in a bottle of soda or water or whatever, and put your finger over the straw and lift it out, that water is going to stay in the straw. Take your finger off the top of the straw, it comes out, evacuates. So you need to get air in the system to help your pipes drain. You also, if there's a sewer gas buildup, you need to get that sewer gas out of the house and not come into your house because it's very explosive. And not to mention stinky. So matter of fact, some people say their basement stinks, and that's because they have a floor drain. If you notice, there's a trap. There's a little thing called a trap that's underneath each fixture. Traps are built into toilets, and those traps are filled with water so that sewer gas doesn't come into your house. Well, if you have a floor drain in your basement, that's got a trap on it also. But guess what? The water never fills up that trap, so eventually that trap evaporates, and you get the smell of sewer gas right up in your basement. So the best thing you can do, a quick and easy fix there, is take some water and mix in a little baking soda too, and throw that about a quart of water down your floor drain once a month in your basement, and you'll eliminate that nasty odor that's in your basement. And then last but not least, it'd be fuel lines, which are for gas, propane, fuel oil, or what have you. And so here is an overview of all the pipes that are running through your house that perform these different functions: supply, drain, waste, and vent, sometimes called DWV. All right, so let's look at the supply system first. The supply system is essentially water coming from the water main on the street. I don't think there's any wells left in Arlington, although some of you that may have vacation property, you may have a well on your property out in the rural vacation home. But at any rate, the water main coming in is usually cold water, and it's typically 1 inch in diameter. It's a pipe 1 inch in diameter. Then there are submains. One submain goes to the water heater, and the other submain is a hot submain coming off the water heater. And these are 3/4 of an inch in diameter. The pipe is 3/4. So essentially then your submains feed all the what we call the grouping, the plumbing groups in your house. Your plumbing grouping would be essentially your kitchen group, which you would have a sink, you would have a dishwasher, you might have a water line for your refrigerator, that type of thing. And then you would have a bathroom grouping. You have water that goes to a shower or a bathtub, water that goes to a bathroom vanity, and water that goes to a toilet. And then you would have a laundry area grouping where the water lines would go to your laundry tray, let's say your laundry sink, and also your clothes washer. And then, so these, to each fixture or group of fixtures, there's a branch, and that's usually a 1/2 inch pipe. And then each fixture is fed by a 1/4 inch pipe, which is called a supply pipe. So the reason that we have different sizes of pipes in the supply system is that the design of the system must balance pressure and flow rate. As you decrease the size of the pipe, you increase the pressure. So in other words, if we had a 3/4 inch pipe going all the way up to your shower upstairs, you wouldn't have enough pressure. So you'd have a trickle coming out of your shower. So we have to decrease that size to about a 1/2 inch so that you get enough pressure coming out, or actually a 1/4 inch, so you get pressure coming out. However, conversely, if we had a 1/4 inch pipe going to your bathtub, we wouldn't have the proper flow rate. So it would take forever to fill the bathtub. So we need a bigger pipe with more water coming out. So like, for example, essentially a hose bib outside to wash your car. That has to be a larger pipe than a supply pipe. It has to be a branch pipe. Okay, so history of supply pipes. There's galvanized steel. Why did that not come up? There it is. Okay, galvanized steel. Most of these have started to rust out. So we'll show you maybe a way that you could replace a galvanized steel pipe or have it replaced in an easy way. And then there's copper. Copper is probably the most common supply pipe that we run into in houses. But there were some scares about 15 years ago where Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission changed their water treatment methodology, and they stopped with chlorine because chlorine was making the water taste funny. So they came out with a different procedure that made the water more acidic, because chlorine obviously is an alkaline substance. And the water became very acidic, and it started leaching lead solder, because copper pipes are put together with lead solder. And the lead is not a problem unless the water quality is acidic, which means it starts to leach lead ions out of the solder. And it causing not only lead contamination of the water, but you get little leaks at your copper pipe. So that was a big problem about 15 years ago, and they had to transition back to something that would make the water a little more alkaline. More supply pipes. If anybody still has polybutylene, I feel sorry for you. There was a class action suit about it just ended in 2020, to where if you had polybutylene, the lawsuit would pay to get it ripped out and get it replaced if you became a member of the class action lawsuit. One that's very common these days is chlorinated polyvinyl chloride, CPVC. It will handle pressure and it will handle hot water. It's a plastic, rigid plastic form of supply pipe. Another type of supply pipe is semi-rigid form, flexible to an extent, is called PEX, polyethylene cross-link, and they're putting it in a lot of new homes. So as we've evolved in terms of plumbing materials, this is probably the state of the art right now for supply pipes, polyethylene cross-link. And then as far as gas pipe goes, we used to use steel gas pipes, just like we use steel water pipes. You probably have some black steel gas pipes. If any of you have gas furnaces or gas water heaters or gas ovens, you probably have black steel still going to them. They did not need to be replaced because it didn't rust out. There was no water in the gas. Unless you had contaminated gas with a lot of water vapor in it, then you could possibly rust out your steel black pipes. But the state of the art now in gas pipes is going to be corrugated flexible stainless steel. All right, let's look at the way a supply system operates. You've got a water main out in the street. It's usually 1 to 2 inches or 2 to 3 inches in diameter. And then that 1 inch pipe comes into your house by the water meter, 3 feet below ground, so it doesn't freeze. Years ago, the meter was inside your house, but people would have to come in your house to read the meter. So now they stick it inside your property line underground. And matter of fact, people can read it by a laser now. They're a laser reader. They don't even have to get out of the truck. Okay, if you are, and I'm going to show you this when we go off of stop share. It's actually a little pressure regulator you can screw on to the end of your hose bib, let's say outside. You can, and turn on your water, you can measure what your water pressure is in terms of PSI, that's pounds per square inch. In Espanol, it's libra por pulgada cuadrada. And then, so essentially, it should be 40 to 60 PSI. All right, and you can buy one of these at Home Depot and test your pressure. If the pressure is too low, obviously you may get a trickle of water out of your shower on the second floor. If the pressure is too high, it's like high blood pressure. It can destroy all the little valves and washers and movable parts in your fixtures. So it makes your faucets wear out faster, your toilet parts wear out faster, that type of thing. So an ideal range is between 40 and 60. Okay, and you can, if you have to, if your pressure is too high, you can install a regulator to get it at around 50, which is ideal. Water hammer is a problem that shows up in systems, and that is especially if you have clothes washers, modern clothes washers and dishwashers, they have what they call a solenoid valve, so they'll shut right off, it'll boom, and then your pipes bang real loudly. Okay, and you really need to probably take care of that. And basically you could cut into the pipe with, and I'm going to show you how to use these push-pull connectors now, so that you don't really need a plumber. And you could buy an air chamber at Home Depot and stick an air chamber. Basically, it's a noise arrestor. It's an inflatable. It's a bladder, an air bladder full of air. And then what happens is air is compressible and water is not. So as the pressure rises up, the bladder fills up with water and compresses the air inside the air chamber, but it eliminates that noise. And you can sometimes get them, they screw right onto your clothes washer. So here, this would screw on to your clothes washer bib coming off of your laundry box, and then put your clothes washer hose here, and then that incorporates, that's much easier than cutting into a pipe. Okay, also in terms of regulating pressure, you need a water heater expansion tank. The water heater expansion tank, they came through Arlington about 10 years ago and changed all the water meters. to where they have a backflow preventer. So if you don't have an expansion tank on your system and you ever have a problem with your pressure relief valve, if you've ever seen that movie or that TV show Mythbusters, they said, is it true that a water heater could blow up and take off out of your house like a rocket? It is true. So if you have a new style water meter, make sure you get a plumber installing an expansion tank on the cold water side of your water heater. Now, you really have to shut off the water in some cases to do any repairs to the supply side system of your house. So essentially, we need to, you have a shut off, a main shut off somewhere in your house. And unfortunately, sometimes there's just it's a compression stop valve and it's got a washer on it. Washers last about 5 years. So if you've never shut the water off to your house and you go to shut the water off, the washer's gone. You won't be able to shut off the water. So the best thing to do is to replace that with a quarter turn ball valve. And again, you might have to have a plumber do that, and then get a drain plug on it so that after you shut off the water, you can drain all the rest of the water out of the system so that you can perform repairs to faucets, toilets, and what have you a lot easier. A gate valve also works, but you want to stay away from a compression valve. Also, you have stop valves at each fixture, particularly underneath your kitchen sink, underneath your bathroom vanity, coming out of the wall or coming up from the floor by your toilet. There are compression stop valves. This is a compression stop valve because it's a little compression ring. They will corrode. And so also the washers, if you go to shut off your water to replace your toilet valve, let's say, there's a washer on the end of that. It won't shut off. So you want to change off that ball to a ball valve model stop valve so that you can do that. Also, in terms of supply pipes, especially copper, if they're located in cold areas, they can sometimes freeze. So when they freeze, that's bad because when they thaw out again, you got a big leak. So you could call a plumber, although if you're a little bit handy, you may be able to replace that section of pipe yourself. The hard way would obviously need a plumber would be flaring the pipe, threading the pipe, or soldering the pipe. But the easy way is with a push fitting. And we're going to show you how to use that as soon as I stop sharing. Okay, and then also in your laundry room or in your utility room where you have your water heater, you want to get your sub main for your water tank. You want to insulate that basically to save money. And however, if you have a gas water heater, don't have that insulation anywhere within 6 inches of a hot surface. You can set your house on fire. So people, I mean, it's a good thing to insulate your hot water pipes to save money, but it's a bad thing to get them too close to surfaces that are too hot and set the house on fire. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this. I'm gonna stop sharing right now. Everybody should see my screen. So we're gonna go back to some of the things we had talked about. And hopefully it might be a little tough, but I'm going to try to put the stuff in view of the camera. Okay, here's the insulation we talked about in terms of the insulation that you would put on a pipe. You would have copper pipe and you just wrap it right around that copper pipe. You could tape it or there's little clips that go over the top of it. In terms of, here's that meter we talked about. That all you do is just screw that onto a hose bib and you can check your pressure on your water tank. All right, let's look at, let me check my time here, make sure I'm doing good. Okay, here's a situation where you have an old galvanized water pipe, right? Okay, so let's say it's all rusted out and you've taken it back to where some of the water pipe is still viable. Okay, and then what we have done is we put an adapter on the end of a male thread, and now we're going to convert over to copper. Now, if you look, there's these are what they call shark bites connectors, push-pull, and they're available at Home Depot. So what I would do is comes with a little clip. I need the right clip here. Here it is. Okay, put the 1/2-inch clip on it. You push in, press with your hand, and it comes right off. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a busted piece of copper and you want to go, here's CPVC. Okay, and you would have a connector, and it might be a straight connector like this right here. And you see that if you put one in, now you have to, it clicks. So you would mark it at about 1 inch. You would push it in and pop, you'd hear that click right there. And then it also works for CPVC. So we're going to mark about 1 inch on the pipe right here. We're going to stick it in, and you see it clicks and stops right there. The other thing, it'll rotate, so it's not like a threaded joint. Both pipes will rotate, but you know, they won't leak. And then if you ever want to change them, you just again put your little clip in there, press down, and it comes right out. Okay, so stop valves. All right, so if you have an old stop valve and you see that this is a compression type stop valve, because what it does is it rotates 360. So by rotating it a couple of turns in, you have shut off the water to a toilet, a faucet, or what have you. But in this case, the washer's gone. So we want to change that off to a 1/4 turn ball valve. So basically, it's just a 1/4 turn. That's on, that's off, that's on, that's off. Let me show you how to use a compression ring. So essentially, most valves would be right on your pipe coming out of the wall with a, and let's see again, right here, with a compression nut. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off this compression nut, and you basically can see that what happens is there's a little ring in there. There's a little brass ring, right? As you take that nut loose. So in that case, we can change off and use the same ring and the same nut, and that should be the same threads that you could put on your new stop valve. Okay, so those are the things we can do with supply pipes. We're going to stop the sharing occasionally a couple more times here when we talk about other topics. And so I'm going to share again, and we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay, we're going to go back to the presentation, and we see that we're going to talk about the DWV system now. And so we have a sewer main, and you see there's two sewers. There's a storm sewer that takes the rainwater off the street. It also catches your sump pump if you're pumping stuff out, and your sanitary sewer. There's your floor drain we talked about, and it should be a trap on the floor drain. Okay, so if you have AC condensate, if you have an air conditioner, your air conditioner has a condensate pipe on it. Don't drain that condensate pipe into your floor drain. Drain it into a sump pump or drain it into a pump that pumps it outside. Okay, the DWV system works like this. Okay, you have a vent pipe. There's the plumbing vent we talk about. And then there's a trap on each fixture. And that's where the water seal comes in and seals off the sewer gas. And so if you're a certain distance away from what we call the soil stack and the vent stack, then you have to re-vent. For example, a toilet should not have to be re-vented because it's a big enough pipe that it can share water and effluent at the same time. However, the bathroom vanity in the same room is probably re-vented. There's another pipe coming off of that into a vent pipe, which enters the vent stack above the last fixture that will drain down the soil stack. So the big main soil stack in your house shares air and water. And then it all goes out to the municipal sewage system. So the soil stack above the last trap in your house becomes a vent stack. History of Drain, waste, and vent. That's DWV. Drain, waste, and vent. Cast iron pipes. They rust, but they don't rust through like steel does. So you've probably got some cast iron pipes in some of the older homes in Arlington that have been there since 1910, 1920, and they're still operable. The galvanized steel drain pipes, however, they rust all the way through, and they've probably been replaced. So the steel pipes would go into the cast iron DW, the waste pipe. The cast iron are generally waste pipes, and your galvanized steel are generally drain pipes and vent pipes. The vent pipes shouldn't go bad because they don't have water in them, but your drain pipes will rust through and get really bad. So chances are somebody is in an older home, they converted your pipes over to plastic. Let's take a look at some of the, now cast iron is making a comeback as a very quiet material. So, and it's not put together with lead, it's put together with compression rings. Also, there ABS, acrylic butylstyrene, and PVC is the most common drain pipe these days. Okay, pipe repair in drain, waste, and vent. If you have an old steel pipe that's rusted through, you can cut it off and you can put a neoprene pipe adapter on it, convert over to plastic. If your plastic is busted or cracked, you can repair it with a slip coupling. It means a no stop. It means you could slide it over the top of one piece, put in a repair piece, and slide it back over and glue it to the new piece that you're patching in. Now, an air admittance valve, sometimes things just don't drain right. And so an air admittance valve is a way to get air to a fixture that does not drain because it's starved for air. So essentially, we do not need a roof penetration. Sometimes people will, they will add a bathroom down in their basement, let's say, and they can't get next to a vent stack. So they'll put in a custom air admittance valve. It can be installed anywhere without reventing. Okay, if you got problems with drains, I would try to go with a snake to get hair out, or a pipe auger to get farther on down to clear out grease and other obstructions. Try to avoid using your chemicals because your chemicals tend to destroy your pipes over time. They're very corrosive. So I would go with a mechanical obstruction remover if necessary, and avoid using those corrosive chemicals. All right, so one of the things that people run into a lot is leaks under the sink, kitchen sink, bathroom sink, whatever. We're going to show you this in detail. But the problem that people run into by doing self-repair, they like to use a lot of pipe dope and Teflon tape. Do not use pipe dope and Teflon tape. The only thing that pipe dope and Teflon tape works for is a threaded joint. That's where you're threading a pipe, male thread into a female tap, and that's the only thing holding the water back. That's the only time you use thread compound or Teflon tape. So essentially, we use a compression washer, and I'll show you how that goes. Plastic, we're going to use plastic slip nuts. If you have a metal pipes, you can use a wrench, but you really don't want to over tighten because you can crack these washers. And do not use Teflon tape or pipe dope. Here's another thing. If you do have that, not necessarily just AC, but those of you that have high efficiency furnaces, if you have a high efficiency furnace, it also produces condensate because it's burning, it burns at a low temperature, and so you're going to get condensate. That condensate is very, very corrosive because it contains sulfuric acid and nitric acid. So don't run it down, particularly don't run it down a cast iron floor drain pipe system because you'll rot it out and you'll have a huge plumbing bill to bust up your concrete slab in your basement and replace all the drain piping. So the best thing to do, if you have to do that, if there's no other way to get the stuff out of your house, put a neutralizer cartridge in that line. And what that does, that prevents the condensate from corroding metal pipes. Okay, so we're going to go into fixture repair next, but let me stop sharing and show you some of that stuff. Okay, so you should be back on full screen. Let's look at, here's an air admittance valve. An air admittance valve, as you see, every once in a while, it has to be accessible So you can unscrew, and there's like a little neoprene washer in there, and you want to replace the neoprene washer that makes the air seal. Here is a neoprene pipe adapter. So if you had a busted galvanized pipe here, is rusted out, we can actually put a new plastic piece inside the adapter, tighten it up as a hose clamp. Don't use Vaseline or anything. If the pipe won't go in, if it's hard to push the pipe in, don't use Vaseline, because Vaseline will corrode and eat up the plastic. Use if you have to use a lubricant, use silicone jelly, KY jelly. Okay, and then we also talked about some drain, waste, and vent fixtures underneath your sink. Here's a trap, and then what happens in a trap is you essentially have a pipe coming out of the wall. So this might be a threaded galvanized pipe coming out of the wall. Here is a trap arm which goes into the wall. It basically, you don't want to jam it up against the end of a pipe, so you can cut it off if you have to. It's just a piece of plastic. And the way that works, if we want to look at a slip nut, we want to look at a washer. Now the washer's beveled. It's hard to see on this camera, but there's a flat end and there's a beveled end. You want to put the flat end towards the nut. So then if I am connecting this trap arm to the pipe coming out of the wall, I've got this washer on here, and there's my nut. I stick this right into the pipe that's coming out of the wall, and you should be able to hand tighten that only. Because again, if you put a wrench on a plastic nut, you'll crack it. And look at that. Just by hand tightening it, I can't pull them apart, and it's not going to leak either. So at this point, you also have a what they call a trap arm, and this is a flare joint. There's no washer that goes on this. What goes on this is essentially just the nut. So we don't need a washer. So this joint goes over the top here, goes over the top of our trap arm. This sits into our trap. This tightens right on. And tighten this. And it's adjustable. So wherever your sink comes down, you can adjust it in and out, side to side, and up and down. Okay, that's hand. I can't move that. That's not going to leak. Okay, there's the tailpiece. The tailpiece comes and fits to the bottom of your sink strainer. There's what they call a tailpiece washer. It looks like a top hat, and it fits right up in there. Okay, and then this goes, and this is adjustable up and down. And you see this tailpiece can be adjusted for height. We can cut it if we have to. Now this is the same thing, but now let me show you something that's really neat. And some of these washers have some of these nuts have a built-in washer in it. It's hard to see on here, but basically it's a one-piece setup. And so this goes right down into my tailpiece, my J-bend. And so now my tailpiece, that's not going to go anywhere. So there's essentially what's going to be up underneath your sink. All right. So, and then drain augers. Here's a little drain auger here. And what we would do is we would essentially try to, in other words, if you can't get the hair out, in other words, it's a hair clog, you can just stick this sink strainer clog. See, it's got little barbs on it. Just stick that down in, and this would be your sink. Try to get without taking it apart, and it should be flexible enough that it'll go all the way down and start to get down up into that J-bend, and you get these hair clogs out, and you pull them right out. Okay, if that doesn't work, you may want to take the clog is a little farther on down the line, so you want to take that trap nut loose, and you want to take your auger, and you want to push it up the trap arm. See how it comes out. Now, what you do is you tighten this. There's a little nut on there. So you're tightening that and you're essentially rotating this. I'm rotating my handle. So if I hit an obstruction, it won't go any farther. Tighten the nut and keep rotating the auger. What that'll do is, you see there's a little auger on the end that's going to eat through the clog. Once you push through the clog, then you would loosen up that nut and you would try to feed more snake down the line until eventually you get the clog already freed up. So then you're good to go. All right, so that covers most of the stuff we looked at on DWV. Again, if we were live, granted this virtual stuff with demonstrations is a little bit, let's see, stop sharing. Oh, I want to share again. Yeah, okay, I did stop sharing. Okay, share the screen. Boom, share. Very good. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to do with fixtures. What we're going to do with fixtures is we're going to look at, first of all, we're going to look at a water heater. Okay, it's very important to drain and flush your water heater every year, especially because of the stuff that they're putting in the water. You either hot water, soft water, or whatever. In rural areas, you need a water softener. In municipal areas, sometimes you need to add a little bit, especially if there's chlorine in it. You need to add a little bit of acidity to it because or a neutralizer, because otherwise you get deposits. Hard water deposits is rust and scale inside a water heater, and soft water deposits is almost like calcium or a coral reef develops inside your water heater. And that's exactly what it looks like. Sometimes you say, well, I don't have enough hot water. The reason you don't have enough hot water is because your storage tank space or volume is taken up by sediment and corrosion. And so if you don't flush it out, it becomes hard. It becomes a hard mineral deposit. So first thing you want to do is, if you have a gas water heater, turn the gas valve to pilot. Don't turn it off unless you are familiar with relighting the water heater. Or if it's an electric water, you turn off your breaker. And then you would open up your valve, and basically what you would do, there's a, as you see, there's a drain valve here, and you just run that here. That's good enough to go to your floor drain. And then if you want, what you're going to do is shut the water off to the water heater, obviously, and then open up a faucet somewhere to let the water out. And then if you want to, you shut that faucet back off and now open up the valve. That'll flush it out. There's a cold water inlet valve to your water heater. Okay. What you also want to do is you want to check an anode rod. An anode rod is a sacrificial piece of metal that corrodes before the tank lining does on your water heater. So about every 3 years is a good idea. Good luck getting it out. Sometimes you need a ton of WD-40 or what have you, and sometimes you almost need a torch to heat it up. But a failed anode rod is the reason why people need to replace their water heater about every 10 years. And so what happens is, once the anode rod goes, then the corrosion starts on your tank, and then you get a hole in your tank. It's all over. If you keep your anode rod replaced and you drain and flush your water heater every year, I have a gentleman that was in one of my classes, plumbing classes, when we taught for Arlington. He had the water heater since 1965, same water heater. He drains it every year, and he changes the anode rod, no problem. Changes the thermal. It's a gas water heater. He has to change the thermocouple every once in a while. Disposals are a little tough. Basically, just the gaskets go bad in disposals. You got a cam lock. After you take the drainage connections loose, you essentially just rotate the cam lock, and the disposal will come right off. You got a dishwasher connection. You've got the waste arm where the water comes out and drains in, and you got a reset button right here. The reset button, in some cases, you have to, it just is overload on the motor, and it stops working. Well, there's a red button on the bottom of every disposal. Just press that button and see if that works. If that doesn't work, there's an opening down here, and you take a wrench, an Allen wrench. You should get the wrench that comes with your disposal, and you just rotate that till you free the obstruction. We can't really, and that's where through the jam release, there's a little female tap in there where you can stick that wrench. We can't really demonstrate that. We do in person. Okay, we're going to also talk about some faucets. I do have some faucets here that we can deal with. There's 4 basic types of faucets. There's what they call a ball valve, and that's basically an outfit called Delta or Peerless. There's a cartridge faucet, which is basically an outfit called Moen, M-O-E-N. A compression faucet, which is an old style faucet, although they are coming back because they do let a lot more water out, especially if you're trying to fill a bathtub. It's tough to fill a bathtub with a ball valve, a disc valve, or a cartridge valve. And then there's a disc type faucet. So there's 4 basic types of faucets. Compression faucet has a seat and a washer. And the way you can tell a compression faucet, it's just like the compression stop valve. You turn it and keep turning it. It goes down about 3 or 4 complete turns until that stem goes down into the body of the faucet. The washer hits the seat and makes a seal. Now, what happens is the washers go bad. Like we said, you pretty much have to change washers every 5 years. They either get corroded or brittle from the water quality, or you just grind them off. The seats also go bad. The washer would be on the bottom of the seat's down here, the seat washer. The washer is here. The seat is down in the bottom of the faucet. We'll show you a seat. The seat is usually a replaceable piece of brass. It's just like a brake lining. Sometimes they get all pitted and corroded and it leaks. You can actually take them out and resurface them on a piece of sandpaper. Okay, so most compression faucets are dual handle operation, which means there's a hot and a cold handle. A disc faucet, on the other hand, essentially there's a handle and it just rotates back and forth 90 degrees, because what you're doing is you're lining up an opening in the bottom of the faucet with an opening in the disc. And so when you turn the handle, when the holes align, and there's some O-rings to keep it from leaking in the meantime, and that's what we call a disc faucet. And that's the handle really only rotates about 90 degrees. They could be single or they could be dual handle operation. The bathroom faucets that are disc type are usually double handle. Now, a cartridge faucet is a Moen. As you see, there's what they call a clip and a cartridge. And what you really have to do is replace the boot seal and the O-rings every once in a while. We'll show you that once we stop the sharing here, because I do have some show and tell stuff. And Moen is got a special tool called a cartridge puller that you use. Although sometimes there's a little plug that sometimes works with a wrench, but a cartridge puller works a lot better. If you don't want to buy it, you can rent it. Home Depot has them fairly cheap, $10. Moen faucets faucets are getting really expensive, $300 and $400 a pop. So it may be now again the cheap Glacier Bay model at Home Depot, they're not $400, but you get a decent faucet, a Moen, a Delta, an American Standard, a Peerless. You're looking at $300, $400, and it may be worth repairing the faucet rather than just trashing. All cartridge faucets are single handle operation. Then the ball valves are also single handle operation. There's a little set screw, and there's a retainer, and there's what we call boot seals and O-rings. It operates sort of like a disc, except it's a circular spherical operation instead of a flat surface. It's a spherical surface, but it operates like a disc, except it's called a ball valve, and it's also single handle operation. I'm gonna stop there because, well, no, we'll go to toilet. I got some toilet stuff I can demonstrate too. And you see the operation of a toilet is essentially what happens is when you flush the toilet lever, typically on the left side as you're looking at it, although they've got toilet levers now to come on the side and on the right side and whatever, different manufacturers. What happens, it lifts a flapper valve. When that flapper valve lifts up, then you get a siphon flush, and then there's either a ball valve or a float or a float cup or a float ball that essentially lowers down as the water level lowers up. That opens up the inlet valve on the toilet, and that fills up the tank. There's also an overflow tube or refill tube that fills the bowl. So as the tank fills, the bowl fills also. And then you've got a wax seal underneath the toilet bowl that seals off the effluent from the floor. If you're on top of a wooden subfloor, it may be advantageous every once in a while to check to make sure that you're not leaking on your wax seal, because you could rot out the subfloor and somebody could sit on the toilet, go right through the floor. So if you're on a concrete slab, that's a different story, but it's still, the water would leak out the side of the toilet. Some people caulk around the toilet when they put it in. They'll caulk to the ceramic floor tile. And so if the wax seal is leaking, they won't know it. All right, so the parts, as you see, they're interchangeable. I'm not going to bother to read them over. And in fact, this will be recorded, so you can go back and stop the recording and maybe take a screenshot of this on your computer so that you see the parts that perform that enable the functions to be performed that we talked about. Okay, what goes bad in toilets mostly is these neoprene parts that seal off the tank from the bowl and from the tank to the outside. Sometimes water just drips on the bottom of the tank, and that's because these washers are gone. What I do, I tell people to just put your hand in the tank, don't worry, the water's clean, and just start shaking everything around. Shake that little ball valve, shake the tank a little bit, and if you see the water start to discolor with it, sometimes these are red neoprene, sometimes they're black. If you see the water start to discolor with a black or a red cloud, it's time to take the toilet apart and change all these neoprene washers and gaskets. Now, if the metal parts of the toilet won't come apart, sometimes you have to use WD-40 or some penetrant oil to loosen up the parts. Before you put the new washers in, wash off the parts, because that penetrant oil will corrode your neoprene washers. And this is the old style wax gasket. We're going to show you a new style neoprene gasket. And then sometimes the actual flange, the toilet flange that comes out of the floor, sometimes that'll break off, and we'll show you a replacement. Okay, I'm going to go back here. All right, so let's try to stop the share. Yeah, that was my end shot there with my little attempt at showing you plumber's crack, because they sometimes put their pants down. We're almost done here. Let me just try to show you some things we have talked about. Okay, in terms of faucets, here is a compression faucet. And the compression faucet, as you see down in here, what happens is there's a stem, and the stem, as you see, here's a stem coming up, and you can see the washer on the end of the stem. Now, down in the bottom of the compression faucet, there's what we call a seat. And so if you have a seat wrench handy, here's your seat. It's a little piece of brass. Sometimes seat wrenches are either square or hexagonal openings. This looks like a square one. So you would stick that seat wrench down in the faucet. You might have to spray some WD-40. You get that to catch, you can pull the seat right out of the compression faucet. What you want to do in that case right there is check your seat. And if it's all pitted, take a piece of sandpaper, just clean it off, put it back in. If you don't have much seat lining left, then you want to go get a new seat. All right. In terms of a ball valve, here's a ball valve right here. This is usually a Delta or a Peerless. You can see that we unscrew the top of this. And there's a ball that comes out. There's a little ball. And then what there are little, it's a spring and a boot. So if you see this, here's a spring right here, and here's a boot. So the spring and the boot have to be replaced. They go down into this portion right here. You see there's two little holes. I don't know if you see that. Two little holes, put your new boot and spring in there. You may have to get a new ball. If this ball is all pitted out and rusted up, get a new ball replacement, new ball valve, and put that on in. Here's your mowing cartridge. Your mowing cartridge, in this case, this cartridge here is about $50 just for the mowing cartridge. There's also a clip that you have to pull out with a pair of pliers, and then you can remove the cartridge. There's your cartridge puller. The cartridge puller, as you see, this will screw right onto the top. Once you got the handle off, then you just loosen that, and you should be able to pull that cartridge out. That's a mowing faucet. The disc faucets, here we can remove. Let's see if I can get this one out. I don't know how this one operates. I don't want to eat up too much time, but you pull this out. You can tell a disc faucet because it only turns 90 degrees. See, in other words, that's on, that's off. That's on, that's off. Well, it's 180 degrees. Whereas a compression faucet, you could rotate it 2 or 3 times for that stem to ride up and down the valve bottom. Okay, let's talk about some toilets. And here's essentially the new gasket you can replace, and these never leak. The wax sometimes gets brittle and leaks through. These will last 20 or so years. You just pound it on down. Then they give you a caulk or a sealant that goes on the top of that. Your toilet sits right down there and good to go. Here's your spanner flange. In case it's called a repair flange, especially if you have a cast iron flange. It's a couple of hundred, maybe $1,000 to replace all that. But if you just get this spanner flange, repair flange, take your toilet off, you can save yourself $1,000. In terms of your toilet itself, here's your ball valve or your ball float, and there's your inlet valve. So the way this operates, the ball valve, as you see, screws right in there, and you can bend this rod. The rod should be flexible. So see, you can actually bend the metal so that you can achieve the right level of water in your toilet. And then what goes bad a lot is these flapper valves. So again, if you wind up just touching that flapper valve, you see the water discolors, it's time to change it because that's all corroded up underneath and it's not making a good seal, and your toilet will probably run a lot. The chain is there to adjust so that the handle, you want to adjust the chain so that it comes up high enough for that siphon flush to occur, but it also will drop down and seal once the pressure dissipates. Okay, so we have gone over faucets and toilets. Can't demonstrate a water heater because I couldn't bring a water heater up to the computer room here. So we're going to share again. And we've talked about a lot of this stuff. We've shown you what we can in terms of the virtual petting zoo. So again, are you ready to go? Well, if you're doing new plumbing work, you can read this word for word, does require a permit, except if you're just clearing drains, repairing your pipe leaks, replace pipes, defective valves or faucets. We cannot move any supply pipes, or nor can we make any changes to the DWV. So in that case, I mean, you could do it yourself if you're fairly handy, but you're going to need a permit. Okay, now we're ready to go. We won't have to flush the toilet by hooking a garden hose from the bathroom sink to the toilet tank anymore. Okay, so stop sharing. I'm on the screen. Senor Jorge, do we have any questions?
That's it. Mr. Daly, I like your last picture. That was you when you were doing
Yeah,
some plumbing
that's
repair.
when I lived. Yeah, that's when I lived in West Virginia. That's how I
Yeah.
was able to flush my toilet.
One question was the furnace condensate line
Uh-huh.
to the sump pump. It's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
However, I would still use a neutralizer cartridge because the
Oh.
sump pump has little neoprene gaskets in it.
Uh-huh.
So if the condensate coming off, now this is for a 90%, what they call 90 plus high efficiency furnace. If the condensate is very acidic and it's running all winter long, it could ruin the neoprene gaskets in your sump pumps. It can ruin the inner. Yeah, so put a neutralizer cartridge on that line before you let it go into your sump pit.
Wow, that's a good tip. One more question. When a plumber do a work, should we pay him by an hour or per a job? Do we negotiate that first or just pay what they ask or they will not come back?
The problem with paying by the hour is that some plumbers, if they're not ethical, they have a tendency to do what they call, milk the job. In other words, they'll sit around, they'll sit on their phone for a half hour or what have you. And so paying by the hour is sometimes tough. Paying by the job is not good for them because they don't know what they're going to run into. So that's why a lot of plumbers do charge by the hour. So I would say if you could find somebody you trust and they're not going to milk you for, extra time, paying by the hour is the way to go, because then they're able to handle everything that's necessary. If you pay by the job and they know they're only going to get so much money, they're going to maybe shortcut some stuff that they should take care of, but they don't because they know they're not getting paid for.
Correct. And the
So
payment usually is between $60 and $90 an hour, isn't it?
Generally, yeah. Most plumbers I've seen, it's $100 to walk in the door. It's a service call. $100 to park the truck, and then 60 to, I'd say 50 to 60 bucks labor on top of that.
Yeah, they never do a free estimate. That I know. They never do a free estimate. It's a charge all the time.
They don't know what they're going to run into.
Yeah. One more question. I have a main water cutoff valve that is located behind the water heater and it's not accessible. How is the best way to resolve this? Since it is located in a 2-level condo, bottom floor of the building.
So somebody put the water heater in and blocked access to the main. Okay. Is the pipe itself visible anywhere else? The main line, or is it concealed in a wall somewhere?
That I don't know.
Okay, I would say this. You need to shut the water off if you can do it yourself, sometimes you can shut the water off yourself to the street, although in a condo, you don't want to do that because you could shut the water off to all your neighbors. It's something that in a condo is something a plumber would have to do because they get a special permit with the city water, county water department. County water comes out, they shut off to the building, and real fast what they will do is they will bypass, they'll just leave that cutoff valve there and they'll stick it up higher where it's accessible. They'll put a new one in.
Depending on what the age of the condominium too, that would be a code violation that they did that. I mean, they have to be accessible.
Right, because that's probably not an original equipment. That's probably somebody moving the water heater and blocking access to the shutoff valve.
Yeah. So calling the inspector might send the notice of violation to the whole condominium association and.
Oh, well, if it's a common water heater for the condo association, yeah, the condo association should take care of it. But if it's in your unit, your home inspector should have caught that. All
right, Dave, you have 20 seconds to say goodbye and the last word to everybody. What can you say?
Hey guys, whoever stopped by, I appreciate you stopping by. And I understand that a lot of this stuff, I hope the camera quality was halfway decent. Again, you probably saw much more by the pictures, but we did what we could. YouTube University has a lot more professional detail and photography, but I don't think they have my personality. So you got the benefit of that. So appreciate your time. If anything we told you saved you a couple of bucks and saved that $100 for the plumber to park his truck right in your driveway, it was worth your time.
Exactly.
And you
Thank you.
everybody have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much, and everybody have a wonderful rest of the week. And please tell your friends about these videos. Tell about the great personality of Dave Daly. I mean, you have to see this guy in person. But anyway, he was fine. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy it.